Hi guys, how are you doing? Let me start with a blunt question. Are you generally condescending and an egoist? If yes, then this video is not for you. Because I'm going to be pointing fingers, I'm going to be talking about people like me and most probably like you and why we are mistaken over and over. Now that was a cryptic introduction, isn't it? Anyway, if you're ready, let's get on with it. Although a disclaimer, I'll be using some words like Gen X, Gen Y, Baby Boomer, society classes, etc. So if you're not accustomed to these words, just check out the description for a full nerdy explanation. Okay. Thomas Shelby, in the famous TV series Peaky Blinders, talks about my generation and the following ones, saying, these kids, they haven't seen war, they remain kids. Kids. Am I a kid? And isn't it a good thing that I haven't seen the war? Well, it is a very interesting line if you treat it as a metaphor. It can be done useful to take out some thought-provoking, hard-hitting meaning out of it. First, what if I say that war isn't actually war, but a sustained period of suffering? Meaning, have you had to struggle in your life to pay the rent, put food on the table, and really strive to get to the place where you are for a sustained period of time? If yes, congratulations, you have seen the war. Second, being a kid here, let's not talk about age. Let's think of it as maturity, the level of maturity, the knowledge of how life works and how to tackle it. So what that means is, if you're living in and have grown up in a developed country and you belong to an upper middle class or a rich class, then I'm sorry, my friend, you have never seen war. And so you remain a kid in this metaphor. On the contrary, if you belong to a poor class in a developed country or to a middle or poor class in a developing country, then chances are that you have seen the so-called sustained period of suffering. So what happens if you have seen this war? Simply put, the people who have seen the suffering in their life and who have not succumbed to it, they rise from it and they are someone else. Someone who is tough, with a sense of direction, a will greater and stronger than others, someone who can truly be called an adult. Now the question is, does this mean that, generally speaking, a Gen Z growing with Instagram and TikTok is doomed and has no chances of becoming a real tough adult? Think about it. Well, yes and no. He or she has to suffer. If this person wants to achieve something in life or to become worthwhile, he or she has to suffer. If this person doesn't want to be some trust fund kid for the rest of his or her life, he has to suffer. Now, do you think I'm being crazy or I sound a bit harsh? Well, truth hurts. There is no other way out. Just look around yourself. Very few people are lucky enough to become rich and famous and successful not having lived through bad periods. And definitely no one does anything extraordinary without suffering. Just study the extraordinary people in the history and you'll notice all have had their share of sufferings. Now what does it mean if you are a parent or a grandparent of these kids? That is, you belong to Gen X and Baby Boomers. You might be thinking, excuse me, I suffered and worked. Although I have to say, it's not true for all economies, but yes, it's true for most of them. So they say that, I suffered and I worked just so that I can give a better childhood to my children. And they don't have to suffer and go through what I had to. So I would like to help them. I would like to blah, blah, blah. Understandable. Okay. Who doesn't want to have the best for their children and grandchildren and avoid any suffering for them if possible? But the fact is, that is exactly where the freaking problem is. If a child has everything without even needing to ask, is praised for participating and not winning, etc. Have you heard about the 8th place trophies? Of course, this child is never going to learn how the real world works until one day he or she will have to face it totally unprepared, unable to cope with his or her life, let alone some current serious problems such as climate change, recession, global competition, coronavirus, pandemic, etc. So yes, basically the parents of Gen Y and Gen Z are the ones to blame for their being softies, lazy, entitled, demanding, and who take everything for granted, generally speaking. So is it a doomsday now? Can we do something about it? Well, we can. If you think about it, in the recent history, Gen X in the US took the country to even greater heights, even though they had grown up in extreme richness. How? If you are a parent, teach your kids some tough realities and make them have some real experiences so that they are prepared for the actual gritty world and can one day hopefully make you proud. For example, send them to do some real volunteer work in Africa. As a parent, I know you'll have to endure the pain of letting your child see the war, knowing that it is for their own good. Now, as I asked at the start, are you an egoist or not? For you. And if you are the kid in this story, wake up. The sooner you realize the truth, the sooner you'll start taking steps and changing so that you'll actually be equipped to become who you think you are and fulfill your dream. Hope I was able to put across what I wanted to say. Let me summarize with a quick, interesting example. Think of a lobster. When a lobster grows, it develops this hard shell around it to protect itself. But then it keeps growing inside the shell. And one day it feels uncomfortable and restricting. Then it lets go of this shell and develops another. And then this process continues a number of times until it is an adult with a thick outer shell. But he has to go through this whole process. Now imagine if this lobster were a human child. The parents would have taken this child to a doctor who would have given the child some medicines for the pain, for the discomfort, and the need for a new shell would never be there. So guys, let's not be over careful. It's good to be careful, but let's not be over careful, and let us all grow out of our shells. We have a lot to accomplish as our generation and the next generation. We all are the future of this world. We have a lot to accomplish. Let's not be in these shells restricting ourselves. Let's see some shit out there and be ready and grow out of our shells. Best of luck.